Hi, I'm Christopher Carey, and this is the fourth tutorial in a series of tutorials covering the techniques I use for coloring light flesh tones. In this tutorial, I'll be developing my black ink contour lines to accentuate the color work I've already done. When inking for a Copic marker drawing, I always use black ink multiliners made by Copic. Like their markers, Copic's SP line of multiliner pens are refillable and have optional replacement nibs, making them the last liners you will ever need to buy. They are also guaranteed to be waterproof and Copic proof, and to not smudge out into your color work if given enough time to dry. There are other brands of multiliners that work well with Copic markers, and the Micron brand is one of them, but you need to let them dry as well before coloring over them. I'm using a 0.7 multiliner to lay in my initial contours. This liner makes a relatively thick, deadweight line and will need to be modified with smaller liners. My objective with this first pass is to lay in the basic contour line to delineate the individual forms. I'll come back in with a smaller liner to strategically thicken certain lines in order to support the color work most effectively. My approach to inking is a bit unusual. Most artists ink over their pencil lines and add color once the ink is dry and the pencil is erased. This method of inking before coloring gained prominence in the comic book industry as the fastest, most economical way to produce a monthly publication. But for me, the process of inking first and coloring after is counterproductive. In my drawings, the ink lines serve several different purposes that are related to the coloring process and cannot be considered separately. I never ink a line simply to preserve my drawing. Instead, each line is applied to support and enhance the colors I've already applied. Consequently, more often than not, I will bring specific areas of the drawing fairly close to completion before inking my lines. By approaching it this way, I have lots of color information available to me to help decide what type of line work I should use to accentuate the area. For example, when I'm inking the contour on the neck and shoulder, I need to take into account the relative hardness and softness of the two areas. Anatomically, the sides of the neck are much softer than the bony areas of the shoulder. To describe the two very dissimilar areas with the same type of line work doesn't make sense. I also use varying line weights to create a sense of perspectival space. In this drawing, one of her shoulders is in front of one side of her face, so I want that shoulder to look closer to the viewer and to make her face sit clearly behind it. If I were to use the same type of line to describe both the near shoulder and the side of her face, the area would appear flat and two-dimensional. I can avoid this by making the line on her shoulder much bolder and heavier than the lines on her cheek and in her face. The larger line makes the shoulder look closer, since things naturally appear larger the closer they are to us. This technique is most often used in perspective drawings, where things are drawn smaller the further away they get, but the same principle applies equally well to developing contours to create the illusion of space. Keeping in mind that the eyes are still the focal point of the whole drawing, it is important to make sure that the big bold lines I'm using in the contours do not draw attention away from them. So I'll restate the lines around her eyes to ensure that all my lines are working together toward the desired effect and not competing with each other for attention. When inking the features inside the face, careful consideration should be given to the forms that are being addressed. Soft forms like lips should be inked with a very thin line, or perhaps have no line at all. When inking the lips, I reserve my black line work for small accents between the lips and to accentuate the shadow cast by the bottom lip. I never outline the top lip. The top lip in particular is a soft, expressive form, and to outline it in black would make it appear harsh and rigid. So like every other aspect of my drawing and coloring process, the task of inking can only be successfully accomplished relative to the other aspects of the work. When inking is considered as an intermediate step in the coloring process, rather than a preparatory step, the opportunity to create a drawing where every part works together toward a desired outcome becomes available to you, and that makes for a better drawing.